libtards who think we can spend our way out of debt, and gentlemen, it's time for another edition of Politicians Talk Out of Both Sides of Their Mouths on the Deficit. I've criticized Senator Kent Conrad, Democrat North Dakota, previously for rightly hammering George W. Bush for spending like a drunken sailor. At least drunken sailors spend their own money. But at the same time endorsing and sponsoring legislation that adds to the deficit and ignoring Hussein Obama's spending binge. You can't write this stuff, folks. Recently, Senators Kent Conrad, Democrat North Dakota, I did it again, and Judd Gregg, Republican New Hampshire, introduced legislation for a bipartisan fiscal task force to address the nation's long-term budget crisis. Conrad said, "Now is the time to act." It sounds convincing, and 27 senators signed on to the effort to tackle the government's skyrocketing debt problem. However, the Senate passed a massive $1.1 trillion pork-filled spending bill recently. The bill funds most domestic agencies for the rest of the current fiscal year and includes an average 10% spending increase for the activities funded. Voting for a 10% increase in the face of this year's almost $1.5 trillion deficit is exactly the sort of extreme irresponsibility that supporters of the Conrad-Gregg task force want to counteract, right? Then why did the following 9 senators co-sponsor the task force and then go ahead and vote in favor of the massive spending increase recently? Those senators were Ben Nelson, Bill Nelson, Kent Conrad, Michael Bennet, Mark Udall, Mark Warner, Jean Shaheen, Amy Klobuchar, and Joe Lieberman, all Democrats. Don't worry, folks. While inflating the deficit and spending money we don't have, these 9 circus clowns are doing all they can to reduce the deficit. Pardon me if I don't believe it for a second. And this goes on and on and on, folks. You could literally write books on this. People have. Politicians saying, yeah, they're worried about the deficit, and then they go and spend